permission to speak. Shadows hide you. I am listening. Our paths converge.
So good to see you.
Hail to you. Never lose hope.
Here, Fred Shadows.
I hear you. It has only begun. Fight on, friend!
Welcome to episode 453 of Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. It is Thursday, June 27th, 2024 in the evening. Coming to you from Nomergon, Ohio, it's me, Edelweiss. From Northrend, Massachusetts, we have Wicked Good.
Hi.
From Teldrassil, California, we have Megasa.
Hello.
And from all around the world, we have you, dear listeners. This week's episode is brought to you by our producers, Number Theory, Crash, Beef Squatch, David P., Walu, Jeremy T., Bottlecaps, Grumpy Monk, The Burger Club, Kirk Regan, Grizzly Bear, Tyler Knife, and our newest producer, SSJ5 Goku. And by our patrons of the week, Jamie Smallish and Leaf. So, thank you to all of you. You can go to patreon.com/coinconcede to get perks like early access to new episodes and one-on-one coaching sessions and help support the show in the process. And, get your name at the front like that. So if you would like to support the show but cannot do so monetarily, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast feed of choice, as it always helps other people find the show. So Life and Ladder, I will be very brief. Spoiler alert, Shadow of the Erdtree. It's really good. Elden Ring, very good game. The DLC is it's like a new game size area. It's insane. It's definitely bigger than Dark Souls 1. Yeah, anyway, it's quite large and fun and so many new weapons. Having a blast. Ladder, basically excavate rogue because I'm bored. I'm sorry, I know, but it's just
It's okay.
I was going to ask if you were campfiring instead of camping. That's late in the month, but I guess maybe you are.
And the highlight was actually a coaching I was doing with Tyler Knife, I believe, on Excavate Rogue. I don't remember the circumstances. I just wrote in my notepad, pyrotechnician. Something happened such that we got a pyrotechnician, and I saw it first and was like, we gotta go, play this, just like play the coins, play all these, and I believe we got lethal that turn, but it was extremely silly. And one of those just like crazy moments where you notice something because of a transform effect or a summon effect and just have to start playing things. So that was a good time.
That's always hard in coachings too, because it's like, I just do this. I had a coaching where we did a little too much talking sometimes, and then we get to the end and I'm like, I just do something, but they're like waiting for you to say. So I just say it out. And then the good thing for them is that if they wait and then you just have to be like, play this, play that, and then it goes poorly, they can blame you instead of having to blame.
Yeah. There have been some decks that I have been asked to coach, and I advised against it because it would just be 75 seconds of me frantically yelling at you and then playing the wrong cards. And it's just like, it might be mildly educational, but it's not going to be fun for either of us.
It's better when we have time to actually talk about the cards. And so, but I've gotten better at like, all right, well, we know we want to draw, so let's do that. So we don't spend 60 seconds talking about something that turns out to be irrelevant in the last 10 seconds on the rope.
It's fine. We'll get into one of the ways where a deck, maybe not Excavate Rogue, but something like it, will just have much more direct win condition.
Oh, you mean like Splish Splash Whelp into Splish Splash Whelp into Doomkin into Doomkin? That sort of a thing?
I was thinking more like Embers of Ragnaros. But,
oh, okay. Yeah. Because that's what I've been doing to people this week. I found the Dragon Hybrid Tempo Ramp Drew. I don't know what the hell we're calling it. It's not the one that actually is used. It has spell damage in it, but it's not using spell damage as a win con. It's a very mean deck. It's just Doomkin.
Doomkin, Marin, Yogg, and Unkiliax.
Yeah. And I started to feel bad, and then I started queuing into a lot of rogues, and I no longer felt bad because whatever I was doing to them was not as bad at what they were doing to me. But I will tell you, when you do get to go splish splash to the splish splash to the Doomkin into Doomkin, and you're at 10 mana and they're at 3, you win those games a lot of the time. And sometimes you just play all the big things, and you play Yogg, you play Unkiliax, even at 9 mana, it's fine. It's still, because you're ramping so much, it doesn't matter. And then you just Marin. You also run the list. Run Puppet Master Dorian. Vicious Syndicate is saying to cut it. I absolutely refuse, because even if it's bad, those are easily the silliest games when I do manage to get a Dorian off with something. Whether it be the draw spell from Marin, I run a Pendant of Earth in my deck because I feel like sometimes you need the healing, especially with all the aggressive decks, especially prior to the nerf, because there were pain locks and stuff like that. Or even just sometimes I would just go like Nest Matron Dorian, go, and just go and clear it. And if they can't, then a lot of times there's enough minions in the deck that you just draw something, and sometimes you get an extra Doomkin, or it sticks and you get to play a Flower Child, and then that's for sure going to get you 2 things that you're going to want one mana copies of. And I had a game today where I killed someone from above 20 with successive Trog Gem Tossers on the same turn.
Oh, God.
Because one of them was 3 and one of them was 1, and I had an Innervate in my hand. And sometimes you get 2 of those off the Zarok's Crown, or not the Zarok's Crown, the draw spell, and with Dorian on board, and one of them's 1 and one of them's 0, and they both get to go off. And I had a really wild game that I clipped and had to share in the Discord, where I queued into like a regular Dragon Druid on stream. It was like my last game of the night, like like one of the ones that's running Dragon Tales, right, to try to get Zarimi, like that kind of a Dragon Druid. Sure. And I fell behind, and I think this was the game. There were a couple of games back to back where I had these miraculous comebacks, but I was like dead to rights. They had a Fi and like a whole bunch of other stuff, and I just like, fine, I'm just gonna play Marin, draw the 3 cards, see what I get. So Marin, so the draw 3 spell got me the Zarog's Crown, and that got me Nomelia.
Oh no.
And it just full clear. Like, so I summoned 2 Nomelias and full cleared, and then got back on board after that. I still had a 3rd Nomelia in my hand for further shenanigans, and I was able to win that game. So I forgot when I first started playing it that you get the extra copy in your hand in addition to the 2 you get on board.
I don't think I've ever remembered when playing that card and making my choice that I'm going to get one in my hand.
Yeah.
I never remember.
I had one game when I was playing that where the mirrors are silly, because it's like you're both doing Marin into draw 3. I did have one game where they had a Dorian, they stuck it. Next turn, they said, wow, played ANR, draw till your hand is full.
Yep. I've done that too.
And I was definitely dead.
Fun.
But I had one game where they did Marin into draw, into the crown, into 2 Ragnaros. I wasn't dead because I had a board. So I did Marin into draw, into the crown, into 2 Sylvanas. And I might have made it if their rag hits the next turn had not gone face. Or at least one of them went face, and I was lower health. So that was very sad.
Yeah. Yeah. If somebody doesn't get ramp, if both people get ramp, then those mirrors can get very silly. If one gets and the other one doesn't, then it's over very quickly. But yeah, so I climbed right up to back around 2000. I lost a little today. I'll probably try to recover a little bit more this weekend, just get myself back into 11x range, because I do not want to find out what it's like to try to climb with the adjusted MMR in 10x. I don't want to know what that's like, because I am used to beating up on people who are significantly below my MMR, and I don't want to play against people who are at my MMR without a 2x multiplier from Diamond 5 to Legend. So I will be trying to fix that this weekend. But in other news, I finally finished Trails of Cold Steel 2. So I don't remember if it was on the show or if it was when we were talking afterwards that I said that I got I had started the finale like 2 weeks ago, and I said at the time, which means I probably have like 20 or so hours left to go. And I looked today and it was 23 hours. And it was like, I got to what I thought was the end, and then it just kept going. and I'm in another area where I'm playing with characters who I hadn't seen for the entire 65, 70 hours up to that point. And I'm playing as completely new characters. I'm like, what is happening? So I've finally gotten through that. And then I'm starting Trails of Cold Steel 3. And we probably are just going to bite the bullet and buy Tales of Reverie in the Steam sale, because it hasn't dropped any further. And Twin B is onto Trails of Cold Steel 4. So pretty soon she's gonna need to go up to Reverie, and then we don't want to have to wait till the winter sale or the autumn sale to do that again. But that has been my Elden Ring this week, I suppose.
Uh-huh.
What about you, Megasa?
Well, I started out playing Zarimi, and it was nothing but pain locks, as I'm still at top legend, which I think this is my like longest stint in top 500 ever. So I did drop out of it briefly yesterday, and then I climbed back in. So I'm in the 400s now, and it feels a little unreal, but very cool to be here. But I was running into nothing but pain locks, because the pain locks were there to counter the druids. I was also running into lots of druids, and it took me a while to figure out that matchup. Part of that is if they get their perfect splish blast whelp, doomkin, you're just not winning that game. But if they're not, how do you get... Because it's actually not an unfavored matchup, but you really just have to pressure and then know what to do if you're down a little bit. And I'll talk a little bit about... I changed the list slightly. I'll get to that in a second. But in the meantime, I was like, well, if you can't beat him, join him. So I tried the ramp tempo dragon. HSR is calling it combo druid for some reason.
Sure, why not? Nobody knows what the hell to call it. It's going to be gone in a month probably, so it doesn't even really matter. Just call it. Don't call it late for dinner. You know?
So I decided to play it, and definitely saw a lot of mirrors. Learned that you need to be really careful about using your Yogg mind control first, because then they have their Yogg mind control.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So in one game where I did have that in mind, they Yogged first. So I Yogged. Unfortunately, I couldn't Yogg their Yogg. I had to Yogg their Unkiliax and kill their Yogg, because otherwise I was not going to be able to kill the Unkiliax, and it wasn't going to work out well for me. But my Yogg then immediately plays Monstrous Form and then Wheel. And this was like not like really near the end of the game, right? This was like mid game. We're at 9 mana, but that's because we're druids. We'd ramped. So, but my Yogg survives. I'm like, okay, I have some stuff in my hand. I had hardly anything in my hand. I had 2 swipes and no spell damage and a Trog Gem Tosser and a Yogg. So next turn, I used Yogg to clear their board because I needed to. It did Chaos Creation. I thought, great, I have nothing in my deck to burn anyway. Hits my face. But then there was like a board too. It hit my face. Then it played the Diamond Spellstone and resurrected my Unkiliax, or maybe their Unkiliax. One of the Unkiliaxes got resurrected on my side. Excellent. And so on turn 9, it did Crafter's Aura and something inconsequential, and I got the Tendrils, and that gave me the finale on the Trog Gem Tosser, and I won. So even though it wheeled, even though it Chaos Creationed my face, the second Yogg still does it. Yogg giveth, Yogg taketh away. But now that the Projectionist cost 3, druids are everywhere, but the pain locks, at least temporarily, were a little bit down. I think they're back now because people realized you can still kill druids with pain lock. It's fine. But I'm running Zarimi. And I threw in Gyre Worms instead of the Projectionists, because the Projectionists were kind of borderline before anyway. And there's a lot more Demon Hunters showing up now because they're also trying to counter the druids. And as we know, dealing 5 damage onto a shopper is pretty effective.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm also running Marin in it, mostly because I want to, and it's funny, I'm running him where I was running Hearth before. I don't know if that's better. But you can still get some value out of Marin, definitely not as much as the Druid. So, and I'll put my list in the show notes that I have right now, but the giant worms feel good. They feel good against the druids as well. You can get a little over-the-top damage. You can kill a spine-tail drake, something like that. And I haven't run into enough pain locks to be able to say whether it's helpful in that matchup, but I think it might be. At least it's healing, right? That's kind of a miserable matchup, but at least it's healing, and the projectionist isn't as efficient for them now, so hopeful that maybe we've gained a few percentage points in that matchup. It was like 30-70. It was pretty miserable. So, and then finally, the life part of Life on Ladder. I do need to briefly report on the finale of my years-long Pathfinder campaign. I mean, like 5 years. Really long Pathfinder campaign. We had our very last meeting. I honestly was expecting to die the last time that we met, and the fact that I survived this long was pretty impressive to me, because I'm a glass cannon. And I just went for it. Last session, I used almost all of my spell slots, but I still had one time stop left. Time stop allows you to grant yourself, and with the special mythic version, your allies, a certain number of turns that the enemy can't act. You can't affect the enemy, but you can act. And this was clutch because we needed to we needed to remove negative levels off multiple people while also healing everyone. And this gave our cleric enough time to do that so that we didn't die. Immediately afterwards, though, we did get a big AoE. I did die from full health. My familiar survived at 2 health. Somehow. Just long enough to cast haste on everyone after all of their magic got dispelled. She cast haste, so they had an extra attack, which was just enough to kill the big bad on the next turn. So it was worth it. My little raven familiar saved the day with my wand of haste. And then, of course, we had, the opportunity. It was very End of Divinity, Original Sin 2. It's you have an opportunity to become gods, but we all decided, no, we will not become gods, and instead we'll do good on the world. And I sat there for a while going, would my character be lame enough to be the one person in the party who wants to become a god? But I decided no, she'll take just a little bit of the divine power to restore her reincarnation as the race that reincarnates, and also grant reincarnation to her friends, and then give up the rest of it. So it was very fun.
It's only too bad that your familiar was a raven and not a crow, because then you could have called that a murder of crows.
Oh, man. Yeah, you reminding me that the new D&D 2024 stuff is coming out. They're releasing all their changes to classes and things, which I'm excited about. But we've got our own new stuff going on.
Yeah, we should, and we have a lot of stuff to talk about. So let's get into some news.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
Really quick before we get into the balance patch. So we are very pleased that we have a card reveal for the Perils in Paradise expansion. This will be on Wednesday, July 3rd, 7:30 a.m. Pacific Daylight or 10:30 a.m. Eastern at www.coinconcede.com. So we're not recording live next week. We will record off air beforehand, a full episode, including the reveal, and then the reveal will be separated out from the episode as well as a YouTube video, so that if, for people who just want to see the cards as quickly as possible, which I absolutely don't blame them, those will be there. And then there will also be a full episode where we talk about those cards and the other cards that are revealed in the first half of next week. So we're very excited. It'll be shaman cards.
And Megasa did say AM on purpose. It is 7:30 in the morning Pacific and 10:30 in the morning Eastern. So
yes.
we'll be releasing, it'll be pre-recorded. So, because normally our things are in the evening. So I'm just making sure that make very clear we didn't that you said what you said.
I did say I will be doing this before work.
Yes.
Hitting the publish button. It'll be all set up for me. So yes, we're looking forward to that. And there will be more official Hearthstone content coming out featuring shaman cards later in the day, perhaps. So we needed to be out earlier.
Sometimes, we suffer for our art, as it were. So, but that is then, and this is now, and we do have a balance patch that came out this week. Yesterday, as we were recording this, patch 29.6.2. The dev comment saying this is a smaller patch designed to prepare for the launch of Perils in Paradise by weakening a few cards that are warping the meta in a way that could stifle new expansion development. As a note, we want to let that early post-expansion meta develop a bit before we step in, so our next major balance patch is scheduled for slightly later than the last few, about 2 weeks after the expansion launch instead of about 10 days. I'm sure that if something is giga broken, they will step in early, like they did with the excavate, the warlock excavate, but that is their plan, just so that everyone has their expectations set. So the changes that we got are Reno Lone Ranger has gone from 9 mana to 10 mana. Ziliax, the virus module, has gone from 3 mana to 4 mana, and Celestial Projectionist has gone from a 2 mana 3/2 to a 3 mana 3/3. So obviously, Reno and Unkiliax being in most of the decks that were not running Celestial Projectionist, and then the other ones were running Celestial Projectionist, being Painlock and Giant's Rogue, and to a lesser extent Zarimi Priest. So kind of hitting all of the major decks across the board with these 3 changes. There are, of course, folks who wanted to see different changes to Reno, probably getting rid of the 1 turn you can only play 1 minion effect, which, you know, is neither here nor there. So it seems to kind of been just bringing the power down across the board, but didn't move things too much. I still see plenty of pain locks. Like I've seen less Reno. I've probably seen less Highlander Warrior, but I don't feel like that was necessarily because of this. I felt like that was just like happening. Maybe the Reno Druids have dropped off a little bit, is a thing that I would see sometimes, but I feel like this is probably one of the better balance patches in that it just brought the power level down without really making things too different.
Yeah, and like when I think about this Reno compared to the Mage Reno that poofed the entire board, locations didn't exist, but it didn't hit them. And that cost 10 mana and gave you a probably worse hero power.
Unless you were playing against me, in which case it was the nuts. But yeah.
But like the fact that, I mean, Reno Lone Ranger has the price of you have to be a Highlander, but you usually have some other kind of payoff. Just the power difference between that 10 mana symmetrical poof and this one-sided poof that on release was 8 mana.
Yeah.
I think it's reasonable it being 10.
We've had a long time of seeing just it, and even though the meta did start to move ahead of this with the new Druid, and people, I think there was some shift away from it already, it was just had been so homogenous, Reno everything. Mm-hmm. They don't want that to be the story for Perils in Paradise. There was a tweet from Hat here. It was in a reply, so not as many people saw it. Someone asking about why not just make the wipe symmetrical. And Hat wrote, wiping both boards anti-synergizes with Reastraza and only encourages the Reno decks that play completely off-board and incentivizes the decks that people complain about with Reno, Warrior, and Priest while removing the card as a viable option from other strategies. Mana nerfs are significant, and we're going to monitor here. The root of the changes is about fighting neutral homogenization, which my editorial, of course, also the virus module. We were seeing Unkiliax in everything. So, and Hat says, especially as people see new cards, we want Perils to be about Perils, not old neutrals.
Yeah. And I mean, like, the times that Reno is really impactful is when they don't have a board anyway. Right? So, like, a lot of times, like, there are definitely times when they have a board and they use that to lock down a game. Sure. But I think a lot more often than that is when they don't have a board and they're using it as a comeback mechanic, and wiping out their board doesn't matter unless they happen to have like a location on board or something like that. So like, I don't know that necessarily would be as impactful as people think it would be.
And you don't want to take it away from the other one, the proactive ones, right? The hunters doing it, the druids doing it. I would much sooner see them remove the showdown effect so that you could do things like, okay, they poofed my board, which is still very strong. Now I have an opening to play my Sargeras or my Reastraza or whatever, right? But as it stood, like with the showdown effect, you can't because you don't have a space for that thing that you're going to summon.
Yeah, even if it was 2, it would be so different, although that wouldn't be the flavor, right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so...
You have a second at a duel. I don't know. You could spin it.
Change the voice line. I'm sure that's completely easy to do.
It's high 1 o'clock. High 2 o'clock. It's high 2. There you go. It almost sounds the same. It's high 2. Yeah, so that's standard. We also got a significant number of twist changes. So we had a number of, and they had promised us that they were going to be making significant changes in an actual balance patch beyond just the health changes that they've been making. So Cthulhu has gone from after 2 friendly dies, give your Cthulhu +1/+1, to after 3 friendly minions die, give your Cthulhu +2/+2. So you're getting, instead of getting 0.5, you're getting 0.75 for each minion that's dying, which is supposedly better, though Cthulhu still has its other problems. Dr. Boom's passive is giving him an armor in addition to shuffling a bomb whenever a friendly mech dies. Guff's hero power went from +1 attack can be usable twice this turn to +1 attack this turn could be used 3 times at a turn. There are also some deck changes that we'll get to in a second that gave him a lot more inspired things. They added Confessor Paletrist to his deck, which is, I was playing that some. I never got a Paletrist to go off with the hero power, but I imagine it would have been hilarious if I did. So those are the main changes. And again, they've also adjusted everyone's deck except for Archvillain Ratham, Zyrella, and Patches the Pirate. Other than that, everyone's deck was adjusted either to make it stronger or weaker. So they've also adjusted all of the hero health totals back to closer to what they were, not exactly. But what they did was they Alakir, Kael'thas, Dozdoramu, Lich King, Omu, and Zul'jin are up to 35 from where they were nerfed down to. Arthas was brought back up to 30. And then Illidan, Leroy, Cthulhu, King Crush, Dr. Boom, N'Zoth, Bran, and Guff were brought down to 35. So most of the heroes are at 35 with some deviations. Arthas is obviously slightly stronger. He's a little bit weaker. Zyrella isn't going to start at 35 because that's a huge buff to her. So she's starting still, I think, at 32. But yeah, a lot of changes across the board. The deck changes also seem fairly significant. They took CNE out of Arthas for starters, which is kind of a big deal because that was often how you would win. They gave Guff weapons for those attacks. So he's got a self-sharpening sword, a Dread Prison Glaive, a Bloodseeker, a Horn of the Windlord in his deck. Omu, who's the Treant Druid, got some you don't have any minions in your deck. Spells like Spot the Difference. You got a Lightning Bloom, which should help a little bit. Illidan took out the Disciples of Argus and the Heralds of Chaos and gave him a couple of securities. Zai the Incredible, which is the copy the Outcast cards one, and Electra Storm Surge.
Yeah, there's more ways to copy your spells, which he really needed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like Lich King got rid of a lot of some of the more broken things, like Malignant Horror is gone, Corpse Bride's gone. They took away Acolyte of Death to give him that all that draw. And now he's got things like Bees, Army of the Dead, Battlefield Necromancer, which is a little bit of a fairer way to be spending corpses. So he's spending corpses in a way that is a little bit less bursty, for example. So there are other changes. We have like there's a link to the show notes to a thread that Imic posted from Hearthpwn that was going through all the deck lists and detailing all the changes. So you can go look at that.
There's some definitely significant changes. One thing on Arthas is, besides the CNE, which is significant, Arthas now basically has to got a lot of things that discover spells and no longer has a lot of those cheap spells that have runes. It has a lot of like Pandaren Importer, Spell Coiler, Benevolent Banker. So it certainly has some spells, but we'll have to do more like discover the thing that then activates the passives and hero power rather than just so efficient. So I think when I saw that list, I was like, oh, okay, I am seeing why they didn't touch the hero power and passive if they just make the deck way less efficient. And then for Cthulhu, let me scroll down so I can see it. They just added the token generation being like a lot better. Now we have Scale of Onyxia, we've got Spreading Plague, and a lot of the decks have some removal. So like Cthulhu has Swipe, but a lot more decks have things. Alakir has Baking Volcano. And they also gave Cthulhu a few of the important Cthulhu cards in his deck. So Doomcaller, which is the one that shuffles a new Cthulhu in, is the really big one, as well as Eye Stalk of Cthulhu, which is the Caverns of Time, Taunt Lifesteal that gains health. That's crazy with this deck, so it seems much better.
And Saddle Up, which is kind of hilarious. So
yeah, that'd be pretty good.
Yeah. So the Arfices that I've seen today did not have any trouble with the new deck. I will tell you that much. So,
but I imagine they were slower.
It didn't seem it.
So, didn't seem it.
Okay.
Maybe still not enough. Yeah, I've been wanting to. I haven't had a chance to play Twist yet, but I definitely think it's a good opportunity to. And by the time you're hearing this, quite likely on July 1st, there will be new heroes that they announced earlier.
Yeah.
So I'm absolutely looking forward to playing some Twist in our last while we're waiting for the new expansion.
Yeah, I did play some Bran. They trimmed Bran's deck down significantly by taking out a lot of the bad battle cries and then giving him like Prismatic Elemental and Street Sweeper, which are helpful for keeping board. So you're not drawing as many of like the cattle rustlers and alley cats and whatever, and you're actually getting some of the better stuff. So it felt better to me.
When King Crush has like actual removal like Star Power and Heat Wave and Wild Growth for ramp, and also most importantly Glug. So that's for Hat. Glug is in King Crush's deck if you want to play with Glug and you miss him. There's a lot of Colossals there if you miss the Colossals.
Ooh, I do miss the Colossals, especially Blackwater Behemoth. It's my buddy.
Blackwater Behemoth is there.
Yeah. Oh, hey. But then I'd have to play King Crush. That means I have to play Hunter, and I already got enough guff because someone in Blister Guy's Discord queued into me playing Bran and said I was playing a Hunter and cheating on Priest. But whatever. I just assured them I just mind controlled it. It was fine. Anyway, Battlegrounds, we're not going to go into everything, but there are a couple of hero powers that have changed. Alex Straza has gone from discovering a dragon at the start of your turn from turn 4 to it being pay 1 gold to discover a dragon. So slightly worse, but that seems fair-ish. And Onyxia, which summons which has Avenge. It had Avenge 3 to summon a 2/1. It's now gone up to Avenge 4, so it's gonna do that slightly less often. And there were a bunch of changes to armor tiers, a bunch of changes to buddies, a bunch of changes to minions. If you are a heavy Battlegrounds player, I would encourage you to go look through the patch notes because there are a lot of changes. And as usual, we are not high-level Battlegrounds players who can really adequately analyze what they are going to do, and we have a lot left to talk about. So they also fixed some issues with the new Metamorphosis Illidan legendary portrait does some transforming under certain conditions, and it was having some issues with that. So they have fixed those. So that's that. There's one important shop update that there is a Marin the Fox rogue portrait. And McGay says helpfully included that includes the threatened line, my name is Marin the Fox, you took my treasure, prepare to die. So if you insist on playing rogue, you may as well get a good skin for it, and then you can go do that. I believe that's 1,500 runestones or $15 USD for the portrait and a card back and the 5 packs as usual. There was also a new video series that they're doing to promote the new set that I don't know if this is the title of it, but the tweet announcing it said 2 romances, 1 bromance. So they got the power couples of John Bray and Baby Bear and Language Hacker and the Housewife together playing against each other. And also Raren and Day 9, which is delightful. So you can watch those on the Play Hearthstone channel. They also posted a new animation a few days ago as well. That was pretty fun. So they're doing more on the YouTube channel. So go if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, go to also subscribe to Concede while you're in YouTube, because that helps us also. But that's neither here nor there.
Yes. They'll be releasing the 2 romances, 1 bromance videos as the cards. They're playing with the new cards against each other, so they'll be releasing those videos as the cards are revealed. As we're recording this on Friday the 28th, there is Language Hacker and the Housewife playing Mage and Paladin. By the time you hear this, there'll probably be more, so you could take a look at the Hearthstone YouTube to find those videos, or the Hearthstone Twitter.
So that will do it for us for news, and we have some brief tournaments before we start talking about a lot of cards.
It's the grand tournament!
So we had that Tavern training event where 8 pro Hearthstone streamers were each paired with streamers who were new to Hearthstone. The pros' goal was to prepare their trainee to triumph in a standard Hearthstone tournament on July 26th. So ahead of that tournament, each pro streamed 3 episodes of their process of, or I suppose will stream 3 episodes of their process of working with their trainee, and these will be streamed on the pros' Twitch channels. You can go to the Hearthstone forum, which we've got a link in the show notes, to see an updating schedule of the times and links to Twitch. The trainings have already begun, and they will be continuing throughout July. And then finally, on July 26th, you'll be able to watch the tournament on pretty much any of the involved creators' channels. So for that event, we have the pros are Dane Hearth, Pocket Train, Theo, Fino, Pizza, Sway Bay, Tice, and McBanterface. And then the trainees are Preach Gaming, Kraken, Sloot, Nagura, Aqua FPS, Sips, Grubby, and Annie Fuchsia. So no Voxy, unfortunately.
I mean, in fairness, Weasel Tunneler isn't in standard right now, so it really wouldn't be her tournament.
Yeah. But I mean, certainly seems like keeping with their objective, considering I don't know any of the trainees, right? So if they're trying to get sort of new people into Hearthstone, then there you go. It seems like some of these are not card game folks at all, so it should be interesting. But we also have, of course, our updates for the Concede listener series. We are on week 5. In terms of stats, there were the week 5 decks were due June 21st by the latest, which was the day after the expansion was announced and Gen and Baku were added. So most people stuck to the basics. The popular bring was still Hand Buff Paladin, brought by 2/3 of the field, followed by Shopper DH, Zarimi Priest, Insanity Warlock, and Painlock. We did see a couple enterprising even Warlocks, as well as an even Shaman from Glacier, featuring Totems and Sea Giants. And then World 8 on the bleeding edge of the meta introduced Tempo Druid to the tournament before most people knew it existed. That, of course, being the Doomkin Druid. So, after 5 rounds of Swiss, our final top 8 quarterfinalists are Why the Hunter, Jolt C, World 8, Probiwan, Pilot, Swift Glacier, Rapipol, SSJ5 Goku, and that's 8. These players will play 1 match per week in single elimination until we have a winner. So congratulations to all of them. In terms of highlights, SSJ5 Goku played Reno Warrior versus Pilot on Secret Hunter, and after a strong costume singer start, Pilot dropped a Haywire Power Ziliax. That's the 5/7 that doubles its attack on turn 4. Goku couldn't clear it that turn, but there was no need to panic. At 29 health, he could comfortably tank the damage. But then on turn 5, Pilot played a Camouflage Mount on the now 10 attack Ziliax, and of course rolled Wind Fury. Goku survived the turn at 1 health, but couldn't deal with the board while also gaining armor.
Can you roll anything else on a Power Ziliax, really? I mean,
I don't think so.
That's just how the game... It's hard-coded in there. Yeah. If minion has 10 attack, Wind Fury. Else, random number generator.
Yeah. Unless it's my minion, in which case it never rolls Wind Fury.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then we had Wild9 on Whizbang versus Glacier playing that even shaman, and Wild9, the sole competitor who took Whizbang all the way through all 5 weeks of the tournament. Mad props to you. Unfortunately, it didn't have a winning record with Whizbang overall, but in this game, versus Glacier's even totem shaman, Wild9 rolled Warlock and kept a fast and furious pace. Glacier held on for a little while with backstage bouncers, but then Wild9 played Chef Nomi and Phanotem with an empty deck on 7 to seal the win. If you could play Warlock every time, I think this bang would be pretty good.
Yep. Wild9 did quite well with the Whizbang, considering that you only get Warlock some of the time. So, and yes, mad props for doing that. Congratulations to everyone who competed. Thank you. And to our top 8. They have now just turned in their top 8 deck lists, and so next week we'll talk about their quarterfinalists.
Well, without further ado, we have a considerable number of cards to discuss, so we should dive right in.
All right, so we have had a lot of card reveals since last week. One quick note at the top, if you're wanting to start theory crafting your decks like we are, HearthstoneTopDecks.com's deck builder does now support tourists. By the time you hear this, that may be true of other deck builders as well. But if you're looking for one where you can actually use the tourist mechanic, that is one place where you can look. So we're going to go by class, start with neutrals, then we have Mage, Paladin, and Rogue. Because that's a lot of cards, we will not be talking about every card, and we may not read out the exact stats of every single card. We'll try to make sure we at least, if we reference a card, which card that was. But if you haven't taken a look at the reveals yet, you might want to do that. Unless you're driving. Please don't do that if you're driving. And I do, as someone who listened to the show while driving a lot in the past, I do feel that. So we'll try to balance speed with context here.
We want to give the gist. Some cards aren't about the stats. It's about what they do.
Yes. So starting with, we got a couple of legendaries. We're going to leave Patches the Pilot, the Demon Hunter legendary, aside until when we get Demon Hunter. But we got a couple legendaries, Incendious and Grifta Trusted Vendor, which need a little bit of explanation. So, Grifta is a 4-mana 4/5 legendary battle cry. Discover an amazing amulet to give to both players. The enemy's is a phony version. So, for example, you might take Amulet of Passions, take control of an enemy minion until the end of your turn. They also get one, but theirs says it has 1 attack this turn. That could still be good, though, especially if it's a Titan. So you do need to be careful about that one. Or you might take Amulet of Tracking, get 3 random legendary cards, but they will also get that, but theirs says then transform them into commons. Or draw 3, but the cursed one will discard 2. At random, I believe, not let them discover. Or reduce the cost of all cards in your hand by 1. Theirs does that too, but not for spells. So it's definitely a cool card. It's also a risky card, but at least you know what you're giving to your opponent.
I think this is crazy powerful. I mean, it's obviously you can get a little screwed if you get 3 options that aren't great for you, but being able to pick specifically stuff for the situation and based on what's going to be better for you versus for your opponent, I can see a lot of times taking either the deal 6 damage where yours can go face and theirs cannot, or the draw 3 cards where you get to draw and they will have to discard 2 of them.
And it might be their important cards they can't choose.
there is some really nice kind of one-sided ones here, and we'll talk about later. But Paladin cares about cheap spells. We mentioned Gorgon, what's his name before with the cheese. This is another
Gorgon
thing.
Zormu.
Yeah, this is another one. Very powerful cheap spell. I will happily take, deal 6 damage and have like 1 mana, deal 12. So, this is going in my Lanessa deck for sure.
And Sonya. It costs 1 for Sonya. So you could deal 12.
Sure does. Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And Sonya's actually better than Lanessa in this case, specifically because of Amulet of Passions, because Lanessa says that it casts twice, which means it's going to take control of the same enemy minion until the end of your turn.
Mm-hmm.
Sonya just lets you take 2.
Yep.
So yeah, that's better. I hate it already. Yep.
I am excited to talk about Rogue.
Yes, at least one of us is. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a good card. I mean, you pretty much, you're going to want to play this as a 5-drop a lot of the time, I think, because you're telling your opponent exactly what you have by giving them the fake version. So they're going to know which one you took immediately. So you're probably going to want to use that right away before they have a chance to prepare for that. But, also if it's burn, maybe you don't care. Maybe it's fine. Then you just know that you're playing it. Your life total is 6 lower than it actually is right now and just deal with it. But I mean, all these effects are pretty good. The effect that you're giving to your opponent is considerably worse. And this is much better than the last time we got a Grifta, who I believe was discover 2 spells, give 1 to your opponent, you keep 1 and you give 1 to your opponent at random, which was
so bad.
It was like unplayably bad. Like, that's a card you can't buff, right? So like, this is at least playable, and like the effects are generally pretty good. So, and the downside is not nearly as bad.
Out of 3, you're most likely going to have something that you want. And yeah, for somebody that has Sonya, if you have other synergy with cheap spells, that makes a difference as well. We also got Incendious. Incendious is a 6 mana, 2/10 legendary elemental. At the end of your turn, upgrade your eruptions. What is an eruption? Well, battle cries, shuffle 5 of them into your deck. They are cast when drawn, deal 1 damage to all enemies, or higher when they're upgraded. When this card was announced, the Discord was full of like, how can we OTK with just the eruptions? And I do think like if you manage, like, you're probably your best case scenario with this is like you like Mezzadune it, and then you get 10 eruptions and they upgrade twice at the end of your turn. I don't know exactly what deck we're putting that in, if that's worth running Mezzadune to do this.
I mean, we're running Mezzadune in the Excavate Mage now, but it's for Sleet Skaters.
Yeah. Well, and when you want that defensive capability specifically, it is good. It would be a good hit, but Sleet Skater is a very specific kind of thing that you want. The other thing that you run is the Arcane Artificers, right? So both of those are very high defense. I don't know if you could just throw this in because this is great offense and in some ways great defense, because when you hit them, it hits their whole board, but it's not controllable. I just think this is solid to run in an Elemental Mage, which looks
or Shaman
much more viable. Yeah, it is neutral. So Elemental Mage or Shaman, I think this just goes in, and maybe you run a Zola just in case, because there's going to be plenty of good hits. In terms of non-legendaries, there are some one specific elemental, honestly, that I think makes elementals viable almost by itself. You have Lamplighter, which is it has a battle cry, deal 1 damage, improved by each turn in a row you've played an elemental.
Oh yeah, so it's like a little neutral scar almost. I mean, it does targeted damage instead of everything.
It's a shock spitter.
It's a
shock spitter for elementals.
Yeah.
Now, the way it's worded, improved, I don't know if that means it starts improving from you having it in your hand, or if it sees backwards since before it was drawn. That would change things pretty dramatically?
I would think the latter, because that's how Scar works.
Right.
Yeah. But also that would, if it works like how Scar works, that as soon as you break the chain, it goes back down to 1.
Yeah, but
When you have that many elementals, it's never going to happen.
that many elementals and that many incentives to not break the chain, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that is an insane amount of damage if you consider you've got 2 Lamplighters, Scar, and Incendious. It really adds up. So I know a lot of people aren't as enthusiastic about tribal decks, and this is very much a tribal synergy set, right? We've got elementals being pushed and pirates, I suppose mostly just those. Although there is also a Naga worth mentioning because Demon Hunter. And there's a new amalgam that looks potentially decent. But yeah, Incendious and Lamplighter, even if there were no other elementals, I think would make them potentially viable.
Can I give you a different reason why it's going to be viable?
Sure.
Because excavate decks exist. And there's the 3 mana excavate that discovers an elemental, summons it, and then puts the other 2 in your hand.
That is true.
So you're going to see that enough from excavates that just get that. And I mean, they can't pick it, right? It's going to have to be offered in the discover, but that's the one that they're going to take to hand, and then they'll play that and they'll get it off enough. And I mean, I think the way you need to think about it, I mean, yeah, it's got 10 but it's probably going to be 2 damage per most of the time, because it activates at the end of the turn after you play it. So it's going to upgrade once.
Very intentional, by the way.
Yes.
The fact that that's not part of the battle cry. Can you imagine Warrior is like shuffle in 10 and they all deal 3?
Oh, God. It's bad enough that they're shuffling in 2. Yeah, I guess Highlander Warrior would just play this, right? Like, why wouldn't you?
Well, and other things would be focused on bouncing it, which, like, okay, you still can get some benefit from bouncing it and replaying it, but the fact that if you bounce it, you're not going to get that end of turn is a big deal.
Well, unless you can bounce it, play it, and bounce it all in 1 turn, which, Rogue does for breakfast.
Sure, but even then, your bounces don't get you extra buffs, right?
Right.
It's only the end of turn. So that's where I imagine something like Zola being much more effective tool if you're trying to go for this.
So you run it in Zarimi Priest so you can get an extra turn and buff it up even more. That's we broke it. That's what we did it.
Because we definitely
they have the cheese. They don't need
the
this.
cheese. We're already cheesing people. There was, I can't remember who, someone in the Discord building a like lamplighter elemental rogue just to bounce the lamplighters and go shock spitter. And there's actually enough neutral elementals,
I believe it,
that you can do this.
Well, the one that gives you frost spells is an elemental with miniaturize.
Yeah.
So
yeah, miniaturize helps a lot. And
Firefly's a thing too. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we saw shock spitter, so it has potential. There are also a bunch of pirate cards. The main one here to mention, I think, is Sailboat Captain, which gives a pirate Wind Fury. In other words, it gives Deckhand Wind Fury. And that's the end of my sentence on that one. But there's other good pirate synergy. You can buff your pirates. Whenever another friendly pirate attacks, give it +1/+1. After an adjacent minion attacks, deal 1 damage to a random enemy. That one's a pirate. Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'll just go over these very quickly. I think these are very strong options. There's a 2-drop that deals damage when adjacent minions attack, and a 3-drop that whenever another friendly pirate attacks, give it +1/+1. Very BGs-like almost in their effects, but I think powerful enough, particularly in the early game. Like if you imagine playing the 1/2 pirate from the last from Whizbang, that whenever you play a pirate, you give it and this +1 attack, I think. That creates this really crazy curve where like you play that into this 2-drop, buff its attack, into the 3-drop, buff its attack. Like there's the curve is forming, which is what was missing for a pirate deck so far. And then the last weird one is just going to be relevant because it's going to be a pirate version of Leroy. There's a pirate that discovers another pirate, a 2-drop. And so if that is played, this pirate has charge if it didn't start in your deck, and it's 6 mana 6/6.
Dread Deserter is that one. It's a 6 mana 6/6, has charge if it didn't start in your deck.
So if you're discovering pirates, that's relevant.
I mean, theoretically, I don't know that this would happen, but Creation Protocol is a card.
No. Stop.
I'm considering that for Magasa's benefit because she likes to go face with Priest for some reason. So I mean that's certainly a thing that you could also do, right? Because you got that, you got Power Chord Synchronize. Like there are a lot of ways in Priest to get copies of minions that wouldn't have started in your deck. Now, important to keep in mind, Shadow Step and Breakdance are not going to help. It's still the same minion,
Right.
So it does have, but if you can copy it, then that does count. Or if you can generate it from a discover or something like that. Or presumably, if you steal one off your opponent's board, it would have charge on your side of the board. But I don't know how likely that of a scenario that would be. But
I would think it would work with Elise as well, because the one that you summoned is a copy, and the other one that started in your deck is still in your deck.
Yeah.
It just strikes me as funny that they made a card that is specifically intended to be discovered, right?
Yeah.
You're saying you don't run this in your deck, but rather than it being filler if it's discovered, it is actually a good card. Like,
I kind of love that because there already were cards like that, and so to just acknowledge it, there are cards that are put in here as discover targets.
Yeah, it's epic, but you don't need to craft it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that makes it so that if it is a pirate deck, you're not necessarily seeing it every single game, so it's not Leroy.
Yeah. It's not a game plan you can rely on. Even in like that pre-scenario, you don't always hit the minions you want to hit with Creation Protocol.
In before they make something that's like shuffle multiple copies of target minion.
Well, we saw all the rogue cards and they didn't do that, thank goodness. So,
Yeah.
Well, we also had some location synergy. So, for example, Seaside Giant is a new giant that costs 2 less for each time you've used a location this game. It starts at 10 mana. We also had Scrapbooking Student, which summons a copy of a friendly location. That is 5 mana. And the Housekeeper, after you use a location, gain 3 armor. That one's only 2 mana. I'm curious what the Druid set's going to look like, because it seems like that's where they really want to put their location synergy, given that legendary that summons 2 random locations.
Which is so bad. Even if all the locations in this set are good, we still have some from core and stuff. So anyway. But these cards, the giant is nuts.
When you consider that we have all these locations that now you can use like in one turn, you can discount this in 6 by 6 in one turn.
Like the Mage location. I'm specifically looking at the Mage location because it fuels itself. It we'll get to it later, but it refreshes on casting a spell and it gives you spells. So you could potentially like play it on 3 and on 4 just have used all its charges, right? Which makes Seaside Giant a 4 cost. So I haven't done the hard like theory crafting of it yet, but I'm imagining some kind of giants mage where like you've got mountain giants because you're going to be generating a bunch of cards and filling up your hand, and you have Seaside Giant because you're going to have those locations, and the Paladin legendary, which becomes a location. And I was actually a little bummed to learn that the Paladin location is just a legendary, because then you only get to run 3 and not 4 since Mage tours into Paladin. But I'm sure that's on purpose.
That could absolutely be part of it. We also have the card from Whizbang. If you control a location, draw 2 cards.
Sure.
That's expensive, though. It's 5 mana.
And you can run Prison of Yogg-Saron. I know it's a little bit slower than you'd like, but, it's on theme with random nonsense. So,
Apart from the giant, I'm not seeing it for most of these. Maybe the one that gives you armor, just because, again, yeah, if you are activating location a bunch, it could be just a bursting influx of armor. I know like the druid one refreshes on armor gain, so it works exactly how you think it would, which is you can just spend it all at once.
And I mean, I would run the armor one in like a control priest where you're already running fan club. Presumably, priest is getting another location, right? Like, so you get to heal and armor when you're pressing that button. That's appealing from a control perspective.
Especially, armor for a priest.
Well, and priest has dollhouse.
The puppet theater, yeah. Dollhouse is the druid one, but the
puppets, dolls,
So priest already has 2 locations. Is every class getting a location in this expansion?
No, they get a location or a drink, I believe. There might be one that has both.
Yeah, so priest might get a drink because it's already got 2 locations. I mean, at a certain point, you just need to open up a real estate agency if you have too many locations. So we don't want a glut of inventory.
I will say, while the druid legendary seems awful, the 2 cost where you discover a location seems good, or at least decent. Like I was thinking for this giant mage that I might run that just for the times when you miss on the mage location, to have a way of discounting the giant. Like giant is a serious payoff.
And like any giant, we know that giants are worth optimizing for.
Particularly when you can freeze the opponent's board.
And it's not a huge discover pool.
Yeah.
So you have a pretty good chance of getting what you want. And it's a good thing it says discover a location from any class, because otherwise you would just essentially always be guaranteed to get exactly what you want.
Does that exclude Person of Yogg-Saron? Because it says from any class?
Oh, good question.
I think so. Yeah.
That's probably intentional. Yes.
Good.
Thank goodness.
So, all right. Notable other non-legendary neutrals. So we alluded to Adaptive Amalgam is our new amalgam, which also has a really cute signature. Although I showed it to my partner and he was just like, what is that? But I thought it was cute. It was like a little hippo with like little butterfly wings. It's great.
But what did he think of Tidepool Pupil though?
Oh, I need to show him Tidepool Pupil.
Yeah, because that's the real litmus test.
Tidepool Pupil also has the best flavor text, which is, it looks like a noggling. And if you remember, school teacher's line, the Tidepool flavor text is Zinashari spelled incorrectly. Dinashary, which is not how you spell Zinashari.
The callbacks.
It's my favorite. There's a lot of really good flavor text, but that I think was my favorite. But anyway, Adaptive Amalgam, as any amalgam, has all types. 1 mana, 1/2. Death Rattle, shuffle this into your deck. It keeps any enchantments. The way that works is if you would see the enchantment when you hover over the card, it will keep that when it dies, unless it got silenced or something.
Whatever's written on the banner underneath the card.
Yes, whatever's on the banner underneath the card. So that doesn't include if you give it Divine Shield and then it gets removed through damage and then it dies. It won't have Divine Shield.
What if it has Divine Shield, but then gets killed by something like, that destroys?
I believe it should keep the Divine Shield in that case, if it gets killed like by Serenity.
Yeah. If it gets killed not by damage, it should keep it. Yeah.
If it gets reborn, the first one will keep everything. The second back half won't, because when something reborn, it doesn't have its enchantments anymore. So reborn's not great necessarily, because you're putting a unbuffed one back in your deck, unless that's what you want. But there's just a lot of possibilities here. I was definitely thinking, I'll bring this back when we get to Paladin, because that was the main place I was thinking about it.
What about Magnetize?
It works with Magnetize. It sure does.
Okay.
Yep. Rogue.
Yep.
Or any class can run Drone
Yeah.
Deconstructor.
Yeah.
I mean, Rogue has the one that makes copies, although that's pretty expensive.
And gives it stealth for a turn. Yeah. Those are two different mechs, but yeah.
Yeah. So Magnetize wouldn't change the cost of the thing. So if you make the one that summons copies magnetized onto it, when you draw it, it would still be a one.
I don't like
cost
where this
with those
conversation is
stats
going.
That summons copies. Huh.
Seems good. Yeah.
I was upset
research.
enough when you started talking about spectral cutlass in the last expansion, and then I
Yeah,
started seeing them.
That didn't pan out in the big way. I
just
imagine.
played against one like last week,
It's
so
a deck,
yeah.
but it's not the dominant force that I thought it might be.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
Truly.
So I have more thoughts about Adaptive Amalgam that we'll get to when we get there. I realize we talked about how cute Tidepool Pupil is and forgot to say what it does, which is that it's a Naga. If you've cast 3 spells while holding this, discover one of them.
And it's 1 cost.
And it costs 1.
Yeah.
So
this is very good.
This is scary with the Demon Hunter stuff, right? This is perfect for Sharpshooter. Because
also Mage, because Light Show is a card.
I do like that more. Because I want Light Show to exist in not Spell Mage. But I think more likely is in Naga DH, because it's a 1 cost Naga.
It's a Naga,
and it will give you a probably 0 cost spell. Maybe another momentum, right? Like if you draw it on your combo off turn, the spells you're going to be playing are like 0 cost spells, and then by the time you play it, you pick the momentum and you go. It's pretty spooky.
It's very strong for that. And I mean, any class that needs a spell again, but you can't control when you draw it, and it doesn't keep update. It's not the last 3, it's the first 3 that it saw when it was in your hand, like Savara.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, but that never stopped us from playing Savara, right? Like that was always the case with Savara, and nobody cared. And it was still, and you can run 2 of these, right? So like if you're playing a burn deck, like again, going back to Mage, like if you need cheap burn for like a Sith Mage,
Nature Shaman.
This can get you, or Nature Shaman, right? Like this can get you like 1 cost burn that you can discount or whatever, right? Like, and if you're playing just like a bunch of 1 cost burn spells, who cares, right? You just get another one. So I think there's a lot of potential uses for this. Also, it's adorable, so you won't mind putting it in your deck because you get to look at it. But yeah, I think that this is a card that's going to be. It could fly under the radar a little bit, but this is something I would be looking out for in deck building and theory crafting, because it seems like it's going to be very powerful.
It probably needs to go in my Miracle Paladin, because you want more coins. And any 1 cost thing that can give you coins while you're popping off is netting you mana.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good point. I'm writing this down. Tidepool Pupil. I've been writing down things for that deck. All right. We also have Beached Whale. 7 mana, 420 beast. Yes, you heard that stats right. Taunt, Battlecry, deal 10 damage to this minion. So if we still had things in Priest that like cared about healing instead of overhealing, this would be a lot of room to heal. But it's
resurrect.
Yeah. If you resurrect it, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Or if you we have cards that summon 4-drops.
It's not a 4-drop.
It's a 7-drop.
Oh, it's a 7-drop. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
I got the attack mixed up. Oh God,
that would
almighty.
be bad. I do not want druids recruiting 420 taunts. No, thank you.
Do we have anything that summons 7-drops?
Nothing comes to mind. But this is one of those things where it's so many stats that if something does come up that can cheat it out, it's gonna be there.
It will be there.
Also, maybe people attempt their. Oh no, Black Rock and Roll was you add the mana cost to its stats, not its stats.
Yeah, you're thinking of Lorthamar Theron, and he's rotated out. Yeah. But I mean, even if you're just playing it like honestly, it's still a 4/10 taunt, which is not nothing. Obviously, for 7 mana, you'd like a little bit more than that, but it's not the end of the world if you had to play it out from hand. And I mean, if you're in Priest and you can heal it, like Priest can do a lot of burst healing, like not necessarily in an overheal deck, but you get a fan club, you get the stealth minion, you have Holy Nova, right? Like you can get there to get a lot of this health back if you're committed to it.
And it's a beast if there's ever like recruiting beasts again. Could you recruit this out of your deck as a beast in Hunter?
In Wild, certainly. I don't know. Do we have any ways to do that in Standard?
I think presently, but there's things that summon. right? That summon a certain cost. So if you hit it, it would be an insane hit.
Yeah, and I mean, if there's any way to like get copy, it's really committing to get copies of this for like a Raden, but this would be a pretty sick hit off of a Raden if you could work that out. But that seems like a lot of setup.
Yeah, Stranglethorn Heart would resurrect it as a 420 taunt.
Right, so that
you would have had to play it first. You would have had to actually pay for it, but then it would be one thing that you're hitting off of the Stranglethorn.
Yeah, which is probably why they waited for Faithful Companions to rotate out before they printed this.
I guess. I mean, you could still put it in like an Egg Hunter, figuring that you will like Kraken it and resummon off the Kraken. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess that's again a lot. I mean, like, there's probably something to do with this, and maybe we just don't have the pieces for it yet. It might be in this set, it might be in another set, but like we've had minions like this that like, you know, like even like Injured Tolvir at the high end, right? Like that was a staple in things like Combo Priest, right? So Inner Fire Priest. So like that's the kind of thing. I mean, certainly in Wild, you start thinking about things like Divine Spirit, Inner Fire type of things, right? So that might be something that you'd look out for, or like a Big Priest type of thing in Wild. Wild you probably have better things to resurrect in Big Priest, but yeah.
We have Octo Masseuse, I want to point out mostly to clarify how it works. So Octo Masseuse octuples damage that it deals. It has one attack. It's a 1/8. And immediately people thought, oh no, bigger Jormungandr. However, don't panic. So it works the same as Moag Artificer. So if you have the Octo Masseuse, you put always a bigger Jormungandr on it. It's now a 3/8. You hit a 1/1. First, it splits the damage by simple arithmetic. So it does 1 to the minion, 2 over the top to the face. Then it octuples the damage to the minion. So it does not put octuple damage to face, even with always a bigger Jormungandr. So just want to, if anyone was going, oh no, about that, don't worry about it.
I mean, like, we've had kind of simple broken combos in the past, but I would think if it's like that obvious of an OTK, I would like to think that Final Design would catch it before it went out. So yeah.
We also have Mixologist craft. This is basically, oh my gosh, why am I blanking on his name?
Kazakus.
This is basically Kazakus.
Original Kazakus.
But you can only craft a 1-cost potion. So 3 mana, 2/3, Battlecry, craft a custom 1-cost potion. You discover 2 of the Kazakus effects. So like add a random demon to your hand, or draw a card, give your minions +2 health, summon a 2/2 demon, etc.
Yeah.
And you make a potion.
You say only 1-cost potions? You picked 1-cost potions a lot off Kazakus. So this was another thing where I was like, maybe this goes in the Lunessa deck because really good 1-cost stuff, right? There's a lot of things that are now both, exciting and a little spooky for Paladin with Lunessa and Rogue with Sonya. So.
Maybe there's finally like a pip deck that really is just we're playing 1-cost cards and not doing something else. Yeah. No, because almost anything that you get, you have 2 tries to get what you're looking for. It's always going to be a powerful one-cost spell if you're duplicating it. So Overplanner, I also have a clarification for how that one works. So Overplanner, 3 mana, 3/3, Battlecry, discover 3 cards in your deck to put on top in that order. And so how this one works, Hat tested this. You discover 3 times, and you can see, so let's say that you have, this is the example that he used. My deck is Huffer, Misha, Leok, Animal Companion. So first discover, you see 3 out of those, and there's 2 Huffers in the deck. You can see both Huffers separately in the discover. So 2 copies of the same card count as 2 separate cards, just as if like it was a physical set of decks. You're picking 3 out, 3 cards out. You're looking at those 3 like physical cards. So let's say you pick Companion, which people in the comments pointed out. You would always pick Huffer, but for the sake of science, out of Companion, Huffer, you pick Companion. Second discover, you might see Misha Huffer. Now you pick a Huffer like a reasonable person. On your third discover, you see Huffer, Misha, Leok, and also pick Huffer because you're a reasonable person. So if you're confused about how it works, basically how would it work if they were physically cards in your deck and you kept picking 3 at random to choose, is the short version of that. And then,
so do you have an animal? So is your draw an animal companion or a Huffer after that?
The top, so they go in. So the first one you discovered is on the top. The second one you discovered is next. The third one you discovered is after that. So apparently there's a way to do this in Magic Arena that's exactly backwards to this.
Yeah, this is Brainstorm in I mean it's not exactly Brainstorm in Magic, but it's close enough to Brainstorm. But Brainstorm you draw 3 cards and you put 2 on top of your deck. But yeah, this is generally in Magic it'll tell you can put them back in any order. But this is not going to do that because that probably was enough code just to get them to be able to do this. So
well,
yeah.
And it might be confusing to add then another thing to the interface.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah.
3 separate discovers.
In Arena, there's a whole interface for like dragging cards to the top or the bottom of your library, and then you can drag them into the order that you want them. But that's a much more common thing in Magic than it is in Hearthstone, so we just don't have the.
And it makes sense then that the first one you discover is on the top of your deck. That means that you're never doing this like weird thing where you're like, well,
Yeah.
I want this, but I want it higher. Like, just pick the one you want first,
Yeah.
as soon as you see it. Makes it
works
work
the way
better.
you would think it would work if you've never played Magic.
Yes, I have played Magic, but not enough to be confused by this.
I've been doing a lot of learning about active player, not active player, and priority in Magic and the order that things go on the stack. It is very backwards the way that this works. So this is much more intuitive.
And the last neutral that you put on here, Wicked, was Bayfin Bodybuilder. 5 mana, 4/7 Murloc. After a minion is summoned for your opponent during your turn, silence and destroy it.
Yeah, that seems good. I mean, if you want to get rid of Reborns for starters, right? Or if there's death rattles that you want to be able to remove, right? Like if you think about like like Stitch and Sew, right? For example, like that would be a way that you would be able to do this. Like we've always had a problem with this with like, say, Tree and Druid, for example, where you have like Soul of the Forest, and then you need to have two cases of removal in order to remove them. Like in this case, if you had a board, you could just slap this down, trade them off, and do it. It's a very specific tech card, but it's a kind of tech card that we haven't really had outside of things like Shard of the Naru. So, which is a blunt object and something that people tend to dislike quite a bit. I mean, even if you think about like Unkiliax right now, right? Like it's not that narrow of a tech card if we had access to that right now, because every deck is running Unkiliax. So, okay, well, you can have the front half. Of course, the front half would probably kill this unless you were playing it after it came down. But again, neither here nor there.
Saddle Up might be another example.
Yeah, Saddle Up would be very good too.
In the case of Unkiliax, though, I think at that point of the game, you're better off just stealing it. As much as I hate it, like Yogg is still the better tech card for that.
Yeah, but Yogg's only one card. Like you could run, like this would be something you could throw in an ETC or something.
I guess.
I'm not saying you should. I'm saying you could.
This is so niche. Like, I only see it showing up if there's a Murloc tribal deck and this gets discovered. Or like in Arena, I imagine it will occasionally. Like it's just something you pick and then has its moments. But I can't imagine this taking up an ETC slot or like a tech slot in a deck. Unless suddenly there's all kinds of like egg decks and things with a lot of resummons. It's too expensive for a tech card.
It's expensive, yeah.
So was Cobalt Sticky Fingers, right? And that's kind of where my head goes, right? Like it's a very specific tech card for a disastrous situation that if you're having to play, I will concede to you that if we have to put this in a deck, something has gone very wrong in the meta, right? But at least it's there in case, like, or if you just absolutely hate Unkiliax, fine. Put it in your deck. lose the ranks because you have a bad card in your deck, but at least it's an option.
The thing is, Kobold Sticky Fingers was fine to solve the situation on its own, right? You played it, you stole their weapon, great. This, you play it, you still need stuff to kill whatever is causing you problems, right? Whether it's, a Holy Nova from hand or stuff in play or whatever. So a tech card where you need extra steps to make it work, that's a little more suspect.
I
didn't say it was good. I said it was interesting.
I think it is very interesting.
And it doesn't have tradable. Yeah, I'll be surprised if we're running this, but it would have to be a very, very specific meta. And then probably an ETC. All right, but there are more neutral cards, but those were the ones that we wanted to talk about. And so now we will move on to Mage, which has kind of a big spells and a little spells package. So why don't we start with the big spells? We have, for example, King Tide, the legendary, Battlecry. Both players' spells cost 5 until the end of your next turn. And he costs 4, so on your next turn you can play, if you play him on 4, then you have any expensive spell to play on 5. For example, Tsunami, normally 8 cost. Summon 3/6 water elementals that freeze, so regular water elementals. They attack random enemies, which could be face if they don't have a board.
So good. I'm so happy we finally have the actual intended 8-cost spell to go in Celestial Protection Orb instead of Yawgmoth Box.
Yes. Yeah, and this is like just straight up power creep from Deep Freeze.
Yeah.
So, but this is a good card. Also, we're getting signature art for spells for the first time in this set.
Mm-hmm.
And the signature art for this is amazing. It's really, really good. It's basically like a tsunami, but the tsunami is made up of water elementals. It's really cool.
Even the regular art is very cool.
Another thing I want to mention, since Celestial Projection Orb casts the spells in ascending order, if you've got something like Rising Waves, which is here, that's a little AoE thing, deal 2 damage to all minions. If none die, deal 2 more. If that's at 3 cost, and then your 5 cost is the Star Power one, 5 cost clear that does 5, then 4, then 3, then 2. If you clear their board before you get to the 8 and the 9, Tsunami hits face for 9, and then Sunset Volley hits face for 10.
That seems pretty good.
That seems
Sounds
good.
like the kind of thing you might want to do.
I'm like, finally, we have the stuff to build the actual Celestial Protection Orb deck.
Another thing that can help you do that is Surflapod, which has very funny art, I have to say. It is a 5-mana, 5/6 beast. Battlecry, the next spell you draw is cast when drawn. So it does not draw the spell for you. You need to draw the spell, but then it will cast. So if you have only big spells. That is a little harder with the Galactic Projection Orb. I've been seeing people doing lists where they're discovering cheaper spells.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So that you can have something like Surflapod or Under the Sea, which draws a different spell, summon a random minion of that spell's cost.
So if you put a 7-cost spell in your deck, then you can get Beach Whale. We did it.
We figured it out.
Yeah.
So I've definitely been enjoying the figure crafts that I'm seeing of these, and it does feel like we were just kind of missing things in that deck. What do we have for 7-mana spells?
In Mage? I'm not sure, actually. I wonder if we have Flame Strike, Elemental Inspiration, and Firelance Portal.
Firelance Portal.
Firelance Portal, there you go.
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's more damage that you've cleared the way for, so it only goes face from Projection Orb. We figured it out. Yeah.
Yep. Sunset Valley, yep, and the Galactic Projection Orb. Beautiful.
Yeah. And I mean, King Tide, even if you're not, you're playing this in a deck that's playing big spells because you want to play your big spell early, but also, like, you just shut down a lot of things like an Excavate Rogue, or really any Excavate deck, because half the stuff they're going to Excavate are spells, or anything that's just like jamming a bunch of spells. Like, if you, like me, hate Shadow Step, this is great, because then they can't do that next turn, right? It's just Lotheb if they're I mean, it's not really Loatheb because it's not +5, it's setting to 5, but there are a lot of spells, especially if you're playing this on curve, it's like, well, that's your turn.
Mhm.
You want to play that spell for just your turn? Go ahead, but that's your turn.
The mirror of this big spell mage with King Tide.
Oh, yeah.
Very funny. But not sure you can play him. But for lots of decks, like the Linessa deck that we keep alluding to, completely can't go off at all if you've played King Tide. Like, they just have to wait a turn. So we know that those effects can be good. But we also have some small spell cards. So, for example, Tide Pools, which Edel had mentioned, is a location, 3 mana, 3 durability, discover a spell that costs 3 or less after you cast a spell, reopen this. That is something you could play in a small mage deck or a big mage deck to discover small spells while you're waiting for your big spell.
Also, the no minion mage deck, right?
Yeah.
It's spooky. It's really good.
And like the spells that you want to throw with Sith Mage are typically 3 or less. So if you want just more of those, that works too.
Tide Pools.
You don't have to. You
doesn't say anything.
don't have to cast the spell that you drew from the Tide Pools.
Right.
You just have to cast a spell to reopen it.
Yeah. I mean, basically, unless you have hand space issues, you play this and it's gone the next turn.
And especially if you have a Marooned Archmage on board, which is a 3 mana 3/3 that says your first spell each turn costs 2 less. So that helps a lot in both. It's really in both, but much more so in the small spell mage one.
You do have to stick him, though. I mean, worst case scenario, you made a 1 mana 3/3, right? Because it then discounted your next spell, assuming you play the spell second. And it's a soft taunt.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing that, I guess it doesn't. Yeah, it depends on what you're sticking. But I mean, if you're doing that with like an audio amp and you're using that to get like a fire, whatchamacallit, molten. What is it? Molten Rune, the Forge one.
Yeah.
With Sif, maybe. I mean, maybe I'm overthinking that because you could also just like not spend the 3 and do that. But I mean, if you really want to build a board with Rayla, right? We haven't even talked about her yet, which is the Paladin Taurus. That's a 4 mana 2/5 legendary that says after you cast a spell, summon a random 2-cost minion and give it Divine Shield. So that would incentivize you to want to be playing a lot of spells in a turn. Just build a big board, give it all Divine Shield.
I'll be curious to see like how well that goes compared to just running the small spell stuff in no minion mage. Because there's also a 1-cost spell, Go With The Flow, where you freeze something. If it's an enemy or if it's friendly, give it +1 spell damage. And so having a spell-based way of getting spell damage, you still have to have summoned a minion, but it has ways of doing that. Little spooky. I think all the more important now is going to be getting the role of the discount companion, because if you can reduce Seabreeze Chalice to 0 mana and you have 1 spell damage, each of those drinks is going to be 3 face damage. So
well, there's also, we didn't talk about this because I sighed heavily when I saw it because I just thought about Rogue, but it really works for all the Taurus, which is Concierge, which is a neutral that says all spells that you cast from another class cost 1 less. So like all of the sunscreens that you would get from Paladin would all be free, for example.
Yep.
So
those all make you minions.
And like all of the 1-cost spells from Paladin that you would want to play, those would all be free and let you just kind of spam them. So that's also an option.
That would be definitely a pretty cheap board in a box. One thought I had on Tsunami that I forgot was that watercolor artists would tutor and discount Tsunami.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, because it's a frost spell. Yeah. It would also do that for Seabreeze Chalice, but it would only be the first one and not the other 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you wouldn't necessarily want to run those together. But it is in a bigger spell mage an option to... I kind of hope we have like a minion-based galactic projection or big spell mage. That sounds fun to me. I will definitely be trying that out.
I don't know how many minions there will be. I
probably not that
versions,
many.
But
by minions based, I mean there exist minions in this deck.
A non-zero number is a lot for Mage, so that's
maybe you've got Sleet Skater.
I think you probably run some key defensive ones and like King Tide and your good to go. And you just try and treat orb sort of like CNE, right? It's your big finisher. And if it doesn't kill them, it makes you a board of stuff. While we're at this Paladin Tourist card, though, I think we can go into some of those Paladin cards, because a 10 cost spell you might put in a Galactic Projection Orb deck if you were like, hey, there aren't any 10s now that they buffed Volley to 9. Well, if you include Rayla, then you can include Sea Shanty, which is 10 mana, summon 3 5/5 pirates, cost 1 less for each spell you've cast on characters this game, which includes things that target the opponent's face.
So it would not include Star Power, but it would include Frostbolt, for example.
Yeah.
Anything that you're pointing an arrow.
Yep,
Yes.
exactly. It makes a ton of sense with the sunscreens that Paladin is getting from things like Life Saving Aura and Volley Maul, and Divine Brew is their drink. Give 1 mana, give a character Divine Shield. If it already had one, give it +1 attack this turn. Again, note, give a character. You can cast this on your own face to give you Divine Shield, and then twice more to get +2 attack.
That's gross.
With the Horn of the Windlord,
Yeah.
maybe. I don't know if that's what we're doing, but yeah.
I missed that entirely.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's 3 discounts on Sea Shanty.
Yes. And if you put that on a amalgam, it will, and then you tutor it with Boogie Down, and then you tutor it again after it dies, all buffed up with Boogie Down again. That's what I'm trying to build. I'm trying to build Naga Priest, except for its Paladin. And we're just using those, we're just building a board and buffing everything and just getting big quickly. We need something kind of comparable to the Zarimi, like some way to finish. I don't know if that's charge damage with the deckhands and we put some of it on there, or it's just we make big stuff with Sea Shanty and we say this is really early, deal with it. But there's also the legendary Sanc'Azel, 5 mana 3/8 elemental rush.
Oh, it's Sandcastle.
Of course, it's Sandcastle.
I can't believe I just got that. Oh man!
S-A-N-C.
Thank you, Wicked.
Yep. Apostrophe.
We'll just say Sandcastle.
A-Z-E-L. Yeah, it's Sandcastle. Yep.
Okay. That makes, and of course, this came from Leo. He tweeted on Twitter that this was the second card that he had made, which was just 2 regular words put together with an apostrophe to make it look special, and I still didn't get it. The other one being Mesa Dune. It's just Mesa Dune.
Oh. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
This one's better, though, because it is, in fact, a sandcastle come to life. It's basically Remornia, except instead of becoming a weapon, after it attacks, it becomes a location, which gives a friendly minion +3 attack and rush, turn back into a minion. But that +3 attack is whatever Sandcastle's attack was when it turned into a location will be the buff that it gives to a minion. So kind of like Remornia's attack could buff the weapon.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you
it is
hand
not
buff
clear
this,
from the text on that card.
That is not
that it works
remotely
that way.
clear. That is very good in hand buff Paladin, because you get to rush into something and then buff something that can already attack for a lot. I mean, it's also pretty good with the sunscreen stuff. Like, fine, sure, but yeah, that's pretty spooky for hand buff Paladin.
Yeah, it's important to keep in mind that it still behaves like a location and it does not have any reopen text on it. So if you attack, press the button, attack, it will then be closed for this turn and the next turn. So you do have to plan appropriately with it.
Well, thank goodness.
But it could be alive like Remornia. I mean, that durability is just going to get buffed. I mean, you could throw an Outfit Tailor on it in a hand buff Paladin, and that'll also buff up the durability on the location more. So it could stick around. Unlike a Sandcastle, it could stick around for a very long time. I've also decided that we're titling this episode "Sandcastles in the Sand." So just prepare yourself for that.
It honestly, like, the more I think about it, you mentioned Outfit Tailor. This is gonna be just another way that you can be a hand buff paladin and just be like, oh, you left a minion up. I guess you're dead
Yeah.
now.
Or you didn't, and I put this on deckhand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leroy Jenkins. Yep.
Yeah, because if you have this buffed up a bunch, 9 mana, you could go deckhand, play this, you rush into a taunt or whatever would be blocking the way. I mean, you get to take care of 2 taunts potentially, right? You play this, outfit tailor it, and then when it turns into a location, that you activate on the deckhand. Yeah. Oh man.
You could even
And-
play
yeah.
this ahead of time, save the location for your deckhand or Leroy the next turn if it's early
That's
enough.
true. Yeah. If you're not going to get renoed, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is also an outlet for all of those sunscreens and divine shields and everything else that you're putting on your minions, right? Because like then you're buffing those up. You're getting basically double value out of them because you're getting them on the sandcastle. Presumably, I believe once it transforms back from a location, it gets to, if you didn't play it that turn, it gets to go face, right? So it's waking up, it's going face, and then it's going back to the location, and then you get to go face again with whatever it's buffing.
Yeah. That seems pretty good.
Yeah.
Seems pretty strong. We also have in Paladin Grillmaster. 4 mana, 3/4, Battle Cry, draw your lowest cost card. Death Rattle, draw your highest cost card. So if we're doing something with the amalgams, we could tutor it that way, although we have... But you can tutor whatever your highest cost card is. I was building a Linessa Paladin, which we should talk about Linessa, where the highest cost card was Linessa, and then your low cost cards are your aura that gives you sunscreens.
You could just as easily do sea shanty, right?
You could just as easily do sea shanty, and then you always draw
Yeah,
sea shanty.
easy.
We know that draw your highest cost card is a good effect, and this is a lot cheaper than Talon.
If you're playing Reno Paladin, it's Reno, right? Because Reno's 10 now. So it's always Reno.
Sure. Or sea giant if you are doing
If you're a flip
that
Paladin.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you put
Yeah.
this into Mage, it's your Galactic Projection Orb.
Ooh, so it is. Yeah. So it is, yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, unless you want to have orb and sea shanty.
That's true.
For the
But then
orb
you get
too.
one or
Yeah.
the other, so that's not terrible.
So we didn't talk about Linessa as in depth when she was revealed because it's Rogue Tourist and we hadn't seen Rogue. But the main thing is Rogue has a bunch of coin things, which we'll get to. But Linessa can double coins.
Yeah. So Linessa says your spells that cost 2 or less cast twice, just in case you've forgotten.
Now she costs 5, but
Real quick on she costs 5. Service Ace, after this minion gains attack, reduce the cost of the highest cost card in your hand by 1. You could discount Linessa herself with Service Ace. I don't know if that's what we're doing, but you could. But yes, we can move on to Rogue now.
Well, I just want to point out Lifeguard because we didn't talk
yes.
about Lifeguard, and that is a pretty significant card for anything that's slower, which is a 4 mana 2/7 taunt with Battle Cry. The next spell you cast has Lifesteal, and remember that Paladin has a showdown combo with Prismatic Beam, so that's just old Reno.
It's the
I guess. If you showdown, then Lifeguard, then Prismatic Beam.
yeah.
It's the old Demon Hunter combo with Silver Moon Arcanist, except for a little bit more
Yes.
expensive.
Oh, a lot more expensive.
A lot more expensive. Lifeguard also does give Mage some healing, which could be relevant.
Yeah. And you have Consecration. You have other things that hit a lot of things on the board. So there is a lot of potential from something like that. It's a very interesting card.
Yeah.
But that my control sensibilities would not let me pass that up. And now we can go on to Rogue. Yes.
All right. So, Rogue
Coins.
/ Paladin coins. We have O Manager, 2 cost, deal 2 damage combo, get a coin. Great. We've got Metal Detector, 3 mana, 2/2 weapon. After a hero attacks and kills a minion, get a coin. And of course, any weapons can be tutored with the 1/2 that
Instrument tech.
instrument tech that draws them. So curving instrument tech into Metal Detector is going to be pretty solid setup for the Miracle Paladin. I don't know if we run something like Swarthy Sword Shiner in there, which sets the attack and durability of your weapon to 3. Like, yeah, you could do that on Metal Detector for more coins. That's probably just going to be in some kind of pirate rogue for you hero power on 2 and then make it a 3/3.
I mean, unless we're doing hand buff things.
Wow.
No, I don't think that's how that one works. It just
Painter's Virtue?
Sure, if you could run Linessa just to be able to add rogue cards and put Swarthy Sword Shiner in there, that feels a little extra because you don't really have spells, so you don't get anything out of Linessa's effect.
Yeah,
you just
but
get
I mean,
to
if
run
you
the rogue
really
cards.
want that to be able to just like, I mean, we were running
air guitarist.
not instrument tech, air guitarist.
Still feel like that was bad.
Hand buff Paladin.
But,
well,
yeah, it's a thing you can do.
I'm just presenting options. I'm not passing judgment.
I think there are other things like Sandcastle that will have hand buff covered for its editions. Sea Shill is kind of what I'm interested in more than Service Ace for discounting Linessa. It's 3 cost 3/2 pirate battlecry. The next card you play from a non-rogue class costs 2 less. Well, if you are a paladin, those cards are non-rogue. And this is kind of the clever thing that, do I wish rogue was moving away from Burgle stuff? Sure. But I can admire that it works cleverly with tourist, because a bunch of these say, non-rogue or card from another class. And so the way it'll work with tourist is either like you are a paladin, and so your paladin cards count for non-rogue. So you can play Sea Shill for a 3-mana Linessa. And the discount carries over the next turn, right? So you can play Sea Shill to set up for next turn you'll pop off. There's also things like Conniving Conman, 4-mana 4/4 battlecry, replay the last card you've played from another class. I don't know if that means you just get 2 4/4s if you play this in Paladin.
I think the battlecry hasn't resolved yet, so you would get whatever was before that.
The last
right?
rogue card you played.
Yeah.
So that might not be worth it. But
well, I mean, if we're doubling things up, right? So if we're doubling up small spells, a small spell in Rogue that you might want to double up is Petty Theft.
No, I don't.
Which is, I don't want you to do it, but I'm saying that that's something you might want. Well, let me just say what it is, because I will just say, I mean, this is Paladin, but I know Rogue players, and even being good has never stopped a Rogue player from just getting Burgled cards. So, Petty Theft is a 2-mana spell that says get 2 random 1-cost spells from other classes. So, if you have Linessa on board, then Petty Theft will double. So you will get 4 1-cost spells from other classes, and then each of those 1-cost spells will double. So that is, and if you have managed to get this down with a concierge, sure, why not? Right? So that would be, so you played a Sea Shill the turn before, because Sea Shill doesn't say this turn. It just says the next card you play from non-rogue class. So you could play that the turn before to set it up. Then you play Linessa for 3 and Concierge for 3, and then you go to town, right? So you pay 1 mana for the Petty Theft. All of those are free. This is something that I don't think is good either, but I can 100% see people doing to this on ladder and then cheesing games out with it once in a while. Just often enough to be convinced that it's worth continuing playing.
I feel like maybe we're doing something with Deckhand, giving it Wind Fury, putting a bunch of sunscreens on it.
Yeah. That's probably better.
Manager does 4 damage to face.
The Concierge does make it, I feel like, more viable because, even if it's junk, it's free junk. But yeah, I'm imagining something much more tuned around Deckhand. So, you've got the metal detector, but you're going to want to spend those charges on getting your coins in setup. So you probably run like the Discover a Wild Weapon or something for an activator.
Whack-a-mole, yeah.
For Deckhand.
You could also run Volley Maul just to have a 3rd weapon, and it does give you sunscreens if you play it early.
Potentially, but the problem with that is then it gets in the way from the instrument tech drawing the coin generating weapon.
True.
Which is the one that you want first. So, yeah, I'm just imagining, you gather these coins up in your hand. You've drawn Linessa either naturally or off of Grillmaster, and then you just have this turn where you're just like playing a bunch of coins. Maybe you've got a Knick-Knack Shack out, which is the rogue location, 3 cost, 4 durability, draw a card. If you play it this turn, reopen this. So if most of the deck is like very cheap, then you play all these things and buff the deck hand. And maybe you run a single copy of the Give a Pirate Wind Fury, right? Just
Yeah, sure.
Now, it's not like a ton of coin generation. You basically have Greedy Partner, 2 copies of O Manager, and Metal Detector. But I think it might be enough. It certainly is going to be enough for some crazy pop-offs. It's just a matter of like if you can piece together that win condition. And I feel like that'll be dependent on things like Mixologist hits or Grifta hits. So, we'll have to.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a reason that you want to double up all these spells, right? Like, I mean, yeah, getting a coin to go positive on mana will help, but like you have to have a win con at the end of it. You're not going to be able to get there by just generating a bunch of junk. And then hoping that carries. I mean, it'll happen sometimes, but that's not going to be consistent win con.
I mean, if you think of like O Manager, if it casts twice, you spend 2 mana, it deals 4 damage, gets you 2 coins, so you get 2 mana back, and then you generate 2 more. It could be very, very silly.
I think we're also running Holy Glow Sticks or something like that, because if that's discounted, that's a lot of damage, because you may not have enough with the charge.
Holy Glow Sticks goes face. I always forget that. My god. Yeah. I think this is very real. I was thinking running Holy Glow Sticks as just like, stabilization, because I think actually you don't want to run the lifelink beast plushie.
Tiger's plushie, yeah.
I think that's actually like too slow, because if you want to be able to keep drawing off of Knick-Knack Shack or something. Yeah, I don't know how it's going to come together, but I find it hilarious that Miracle Rogue is actually a Miracle Paladin with rogue cards.
Yes. And the Holy Glow Sticks, if you forgot, listener, is Lifesteal, deal 4 damage, cost 1 if you've cast a holy spell this turn. It was from the mini set.
Yeah, it's 4 or 1 if you've cast a holy spell. Now, there aren't a ton of holy spells because the sunscreens are not holy, but Divine Brew gives you multiple casts. So
and Life-Saving Aura.
You got Life-Saving Aura, you have Hand of Adal, you have Lay Down the Law if you want to do that, right? Like, you could even play, if you really were hard up, you could play Inventor's Aura, Resistance Aura. I'm not recommending it. I'm just saying that those are holy spells. You also have Equality and Flash of Light. So you've got a decent number of holy spells that you can play that are cheaper than 2. And that doesn't have to be cheaper than 2. I mean, you probably want it to be just to be able to fit everything in, but it doesn't have to be.
Theoretically, you could run Spotlight with the Divine Brew. I don't know if we're doing that, but you could. You also have Hi-Ho Silverwing, can tutor holy spells, and it has a Divine Shield. If we're doing like a Flickering Light bot, then I think we are doing all of that. But that's a different deck.
I'm imagining not doing Flickering Light bot and just having enough to activate the glow stick, because that's 8 damage. Oh my goodness.
And I will remind you, if you've forgotten what Flickering Lightbot is, because you probably have never seen it, it's a 3 mana 3/3 from the Whizbang mini set with Gigantify, which costs 1 less for each holy spell you've cast this game.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a giant. The Gigantify second half of it is a giant, basically.
Yes.
But yeah, I am excited for Miracle Paladin and seeing what people come up with. And we should mention this Rogue Legendary, though.
We have to talk about actually playing Rogue? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were just going to talk about using the Paladin and skip over the fact that Rogue gets to continue being a class.
So we don't know the other half of this yet, but the Rogue's Taurus is a Warlock Taurus, Maestra Mask Merchant. 6 mana, 6/5, Battle Cry. Discover a hero card from the past from another class. Now, that does not include Galacrons. That has been confirmed, no Galacrons. And it won't be anything that is currently in Standard, like Headless Horseman, or Reno Lone Ranger, which is also...
Or Jiraxis, which is something that's fallen off a lot of people's lists because they forgot that Jiraxis is still in core, and I can't really blame them for that.
Or Shadowcrafter Scrabs or Valera the Hollow because they are rogue. But if you go into the library and you look for heroes, everything else is up for grabs, which I'm going to do now.
And you may say, like I did, well, this is a really slow game plan. And it is, because you're playing a 6-drop to discover a card that costs at least 6 that you're going to play that's probably going to have questionable value. But the value that it has is not whatever is on the hero card. This is something that Hat pointed out to me in the Discord today. The value is not anything that's on the hero card. The value is that it has turned you into a non-rogue class for purposes of playing test gaming.
No.
And I groaned so loudly that he probably heard me down in New York.
Because it'll play all your rogue cards again.
It sure will.
Oh,
as well as anything that's from a different... So it will also play your burgled cards, except for the ones if you played a burgled card from...
the new class.
The new class. Like, let's say that you became Dreadlich Tamsin and you are a Warlock Tourist. It now wouldn't replay your Warlock cards, but it would replay your Rogue cards. But if you discovered a Priest card, it would play that.
Yeah.
So...
I now need to look at all the Rogue cards to see how you would replay them in a way that's relevant.
I mean, it doesn't matter, right? It's just like a gigantic mass of playing every card that you would have played that game.
One thing you do have to be careful of is all your bounces are going to hit random stuff that you tried to leave on the board.
Oh, no. You mean you might accidentally bounce Test back to your hand? That would be terrible. Why would you want that?
Yeah, you might get your test back. You probably will get your test back if you had enough Shadow Steps and Breakdances. That's true.
Oh, that all sounds incredibly chaotic, but sort of on the more certain end of probably pretty good is just wishing well. There's so many more. You have 2 more coin generators for a wishing well deck, and they're both solid ones. So you've got the weapon now, which, as we've established, you can tutor. You've got this 2-cost combo spell that can give you a coin. You've got the Wrangler that was always like okay, but you probably still run it the 3/4. You've got Greedy Partner. I think that might be it because
Lone Shark isn't still in standard, right?
No, you don't run the mech magnetize one, but
Dart Throw, Bounty, Wrangler, Quick Draw, or combo. Yeah.
Dart Throw was the one I was missing. So you got 5 coin generators, which is 10 cards. So it really is just like if you draw Wishing Well, you're good to go. Because you will generate enough coins. So that has me a little spooked, particularly when you pair it with Rogue's other legendary. They did it. They actually gave Rogue 2 good legendaries. And even I'm a little scared.
And we're also giving them payoffs for for burgling cards again, which is my favorite thing of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it is cool that they brought back side quests, which is something that we haven't seen for a minute. So Treasure Hunter Eudora is a 6-mana 4/5 pirate. With Battlecry, go on a side quest to discover amazing loot. Play 3 cards from other classes to complete it. And the amazing loot is Kazakhstan treasure.
Yep, all those dual cards.
Yeah.
So you've got Embers of Ragnaros. You can, if you're lucky, get both parts of Blade of Quel'Thalas. That's still a thing. There's quite a few things that destroy boards very effectively.
There's some big minions. Book of the Dead. Deal 7 damage to all enemies. 1 less for each minion that's died this game. That was pretty good. Annoy a Horn, and you'll never be a hit again, unless they have Reno.
So you know the one where you summon a bunch of copies of a thing? 1/1 copies, but still.
Mm-hmm.
Velarok.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Why? Why are you like this?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good clip on Trollden, but it may be a lot of clips.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we don't even have the Warlock cards, so we're not able to like fully evaluate some of these things, because there's a very real possibility of having enough Warlock cards you want to play that you just run Maestra and Eudora in a deck, and you don't even need Burgle cards. You just play Warlock cards.
You only need 3.
Yeah.
So if you have,
I mean, you could just play Excavate Rogue with these in too, and then the Scorpion gets you there. Also,
yeah, I am reassured. I'm not even sure if that's the right word, but comforted mildly by the fact that the Excavate Rogue list is already a little tight. So
they'll make room. They always seem to find a way.
I know they will. Yeah, they'll add Treasure Hunter Eudora. Maybe they like ditch Marin for Eudora. That's kind of what I would imagine. I could see some people running Maestra just for the hero, right? Not even picking any Warlock cards, but we'll have
Just
to see what
it's
the
fun.
Warlock cards are.
Yeah.
Figure out the full potential.
I mean, if you're running Tess, you're running Maestra. Like, why wouldn't you? Right? Because you just get so much more value out of your Tess if you're playing Tess.
Goku points out you could remove Flint.
Yeah,
as a card.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's probably an easy one.
Yeah.
The greedy partners, maybe.
Yeah.
It's funny removing greedy partners to be more greedy.
So I guess Flint does give you a bunch of that can just complete the side quest on his own too. So maybe Flint's not the one you want to cut necessarily. But.
Yeah. Well, I will leave those tough choices to someone else.
I
I have plenty of
I
other
can't
exciting things to do with this class. And
we can definitely
Paladin.
count.
Yeah.
We can definitely count on someone refining this quickly.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we have hit the 2-hour mark. So I think that's about time to wrap it up. I know we didn't go over quite everything, but I think we did a good job of getting the good hits in. So we have many folks we'd like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website at Concede.com, where you can also find our content info, our show notes, and our Patreon information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/Concede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.concede.com. Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.concede.com. And write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at CoinConcede. And if you'd like some CC swag, head on over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. Thank you to SSJ5 Goku for the sub during the show. And Coin Concedes.
I can start. I will coin concede to my brother for DMing a multi-year campaign with the most difficult to balance encounters in the world, because he said it was fine until we hit like level 12, and then suddenly it was not fine, because not only does D&D get hard with high level spells, that's why Baldur's Gate 3 stops at level 12, but also we were mythic, which meant, for example, that my mage character could spend a mythic point to cast any wizard spell that had ever been printed in Pathfinder. Having played Pathfinder for over a decade, I know hundreds of them. And so he had to be ready for me to cast literally anything for any situation. So not easy to balance. And of course, the other mythic stuff is equally broken. So I'll let you imagine equally broken for a martial class. So it was a really fun campaign, and I really appreciate all of the work that he put into that and making it something that we could really use to come together every couple of weeks. And putting up with me not always being fast on my turns or consistent in my attendance. So I appreciate that.
This is why Descent into Avernus campaign is levels 1 to 12.
Exactly.
it's the most common sort of play range.
Yeah.
Descent into Avernus is also what I call talking about the rogue cards. So
yes. No, I would be like, oh, we have to assault this tower. All right, we're going to all greater teleport above the tower and then slow our fall and then like bombard it from above. He's like, why do I?
Oh. Wicked, how about you?
Well, so first of all, I'm gonna Coin Concedes the community team for getting us the Whizbang package this week that had the long rumored King plushie, and there have been some allusions to that it might be sold elsewhere for not just creators, but he is adorable. And he and Jasper the Bear have been having some good times, and also a whiz-bang miniature that with a whole paint set to be able to paint it. So
I just realized,
Yeah.
was there not a pin this time?
there was not a pin this time.
Oh.
Yeah.
Bummer.
But I mean, these are. I mean, I like collecting the pins on my backpack, but these are good. But also,
Those are excellent gifts.
So if so also if Magace's coin concede is going to be about D&D, then my coin concede is going to be about Commander. So I'm going to coin concede to Gator in my online spell table group that Mad at Arms invited me to, because he has with and completely unintentionally found ways in the last several games that we've played to play my decks better than I am playing my decks on the other side of the table. I was playing last night a deck that has the venture into the dungeon mechanic from the Forgotten Realms set. And it comes with like these cards that you have, like you mark where you are in the dungeon as you have cards that tell you to venture into the dungeon. And I'd played a couple of them, and he all of a sudden said, "I'm going to have to learn how to play dungeons now, aren't I?" And he made 2 copies of one of my creatures that did all the venturing into the dungeon and completed an entire dungeon before I got to. Which in this one, it reveals 10 cards from the top of your deck, and then you get to put one of the creatures into play immediately without paying its cost. So yeah, pretty good. So I said in our Discord chat afterwards, now I understand why Sidisi dusts all of his priest cards. So but I had fun regardless, even if I was getting beaten up with my own stuff. So what about you, Edel?
I am going to coin concede to Tyler Knife for that crazy excavate rogue coaching with the pyrotechnician. That was a good time.
Well, on that happy note, we will see you. So remember, we are not going to be recording live next week, but we are going to be releasing our episode a little bit early at 7:30 a.m. Pacific or 10:30 a.m. Eastern. So keep an eye out for that. But until next time, keep calm and build sandcastle in the sand. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
All life must end. I yield for now. I concede. Well fought. I concede.
You win this one.
The victory is yours.
You have bested him.
I give up.
You win this one, friend. You win this time. I choose death.